Sonali Kolhatkar wears many hats. Among them, she is a senior editor at Yes magazine. That's Yes, all caps with an exclamation point, I believe. And she has a new piece out there on the presidential candidacy of Kamala Harris, how it is not only historic, but for women of color like herself, it's complicated. So, first of all, Sonali Kolhatkar, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's always my pleasure.
So, obviously, I don't want to summarize anybody's piece for them, especially a piece as personal as this one, and there's a lot to unpack in it. But just briefly, what was the thinking behind writing it?
Well, Kamala Harris looks like me. I look like her. We share heritage. She's half Indian. It is, I never thought that in my lifetime, somebody who looked like me would get this close to the White House as the presumptive Democratic Party's nominee. It was kind of strange for me to even consider that notion. Yes, she and other women of color have run for president before, but never been the nominee. And she still isn't technically, but she is the presumptive nominee. She's had enough pledged delegates. And so it's kind of a historic thing. Now, that said, it's always been really difficult for those of us who have understood that elections in particular are cast as popularity contests, but they really aren't, to divorce ourselves from the fact that somebody who looks like us is getting close to the highest seat of power in the land and, among the highest in the world, if not the highest in the world. Because we know that whoever sits in the White House doesn't necessarily change or transform our society from on high. Society, community gets transformed from bottom up. We also know that often identity politics is used as a wedge between communities, used as a weapon. We know that Barack Obama did not make this country an anti-racist nation. We didn't suddenly end racial injustices when he became president. And so for that reason, we understand so well that even when Kamala Harris becomes president, it doesn't necessarily mean that now women of color are going to have all of those demographic advantages that say white men do. We are, especially Black women are on the bottom of every demographic statistic in terms of maternal mortality and health and education and employment, et cetera. So we understand all of that. We also are bracing ourselves for the fact that Kamala Harris, by virtue of being a brown woman, a half Black, half brown woman, is going to garner racist and sexist vitriol of the kind that we saw 4 years ago, a little bit, when she became the vice presidential pick. And that was nothing compared to what we're going to see now. And it is terrifying because it's hard not to take that personally, especially from people who may be in your social circle. An attack on her feels like an attack on me or on women who look like me. And so it's very, very complicated because what we want to really do is push all of that aside and say, hang on, what is she going to do about Gaza? What is she going to do about racist police violence? What is she going to do about wealth inequality? What is she going to do about student loan debt forgiveness and Medicare for all? That's what we really, really want to focus on. But we're going to have an election cycle where, unfortunately, those questions are going to be pushed aside, and we're all going to be forced to contend with the fact that she is a woman of color in this historic history-making race. It's complicated. And
Yes. Yeah.
I want to warn people that the women who look like Kamala Harris who are in your life, it's going to be a complicated 6 months for us. And we are not asking anybody to fawn over Kamala Harris and get excited about her as the best things in sliced bread, which, a lot of my friends are doing. And I'm like, that's not helpful, because I don't want to just be uncritically behind her. We should never do that to politicians. We need to demand politicians follow us. Forget about I'm with her. Is she with us?
Well, that's so well said, and obviously I was working for the Bernie campaign in 2016, so I'm with her used to irritate me, but not because, it was communicating a message about gender, but I was already getting communicated by this kind of phraseology before Joe Biden stepped down, because I almost wrote a piece about it. I first wrote a piece about this phrase in 2007, let's have his back. As James Carville wrote a piece about Hillary Clinton in 2007, let's have her back. And then when Joe Biden got in trouble, let's have his back. No, I want you folks to have our back. So the four things that you listed, I mean, I to the extent that I can, I feel your pain because, for example, the four things you listed, let's see, you listed Gaza, you listed inequality, you listed what else? I'm blanking. Student
Care,
loans,
student loans. Yeah. I mean, I'm just
all
throwing
of which,
climate change. I mean, there's immigration.
all of which disproportionately harm people of color and women. So at least it doesn't feel quite like the cynical play I've felt the Democrats have done in the past, where just representation should be enough and not actual policies that benefit the people that are being represented. And I think that's part of what you're dealing with here, right? Because, okay, you can feel, women of color can feel an authentic sense of representation, which is great, which is fantastic. But if it's used to diffuse the calls for or distract from the calls for reducing inequality and all these other things we've listed, then it's not even bittersweet. I mean, it's mostly bitter, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing is we cannot let that eclipse the real issues that are impacting us day to day. It's not helpful to see people fawn over Kamala Harris. It's also not helpful for people to dismiss everything about her candidacy because so that's the other thing that I list in the story is that there are basically going to be roughly three camps. Those on the right are going to uh, project the worst notions on Kamala Harris, that she's going to be, in their minds, the most aggressive, radical, woke, leftist, etc., whatever moniker you can think of, a person is going to destroy the nation, right? That's what the right is going to make her out to be. And then a lot of folks on the left are basically going to say that she's going to do nothing right, absolutely
Right.
nothing right. And then there's the folks in the center who are just basically going to say, we've got her back. We love Kamala. Whatever she needs, we're going to be there. Black women for Kamala, white women for Kamala, white men for Kamala, all of the Zoom calls that, people are
Right. Oh, yeah.
jumping on to show their enthusiasm, to
Right.
fundraise for her, who are getting so excited about her and who are jumping on the Kamala bandwagon blindly and giving away all of their power, because that's basically what it is. You're saying,
Right.
it doesn't matter what you do, I'm with you. And so none of these three camps really are satisfactory for me. I don't find I fit into any of them. I do think if we look at what Biden did, right? Biden allowed himself to be pushed on certain issues. His his presidency on economic issues was more progressive than we thought it was going to be, because he came into the presidency as a complete centrist, and he felt the pressure from the Bernie candidacy. He felt the pressure from down below. He's been more pro-union than we expected him to be. He's been modest on some other issues on inequality. And then, so he's allowed himself to be pushed on some issues, and then he's resolutely refused himself to be pushed on other issues, such as Gaza, in spite of the fact that it was risking his entire presidential career and could have been one of the reasons why his re-election chances were tanked. He refused to let himself be pushed in spite of the relentless pressure from down below, led by young Jewish folks right in this country. And so probably Kamala Harris's presidency is going to be similar to that. She's going to allow herself to be pushed if she becomes president. Let me remind myself, if she
Right.
becomes president, she's going to allow herself to be pushed on certain issues, and she's going to dig her heels on other issues. And that's that's what happens. That's what we're going to get. So in the end, the main thing for me is to beat fascism and to understand that we're not going to get everything we want from a Kamala Harris presidency. We got to fight like hell for 4 years to hold her accountable, just like many of us have done during the Biden presidency, and won some concessions and lost a lot of things, because that's politics. So let's be realistic.
You know, A woman of color I admire greatly, Ella Baker,
Oh,
said, as the great civil rights thinker and activist, said, "A strong people don't need strong leaders." And I feel that uh, that lesson has yet to be widely spread among, the left, broadly speaking. That as much as roughly, our 50% of the aisle, whatever you want to call it, however broad that may be, um, recognizes the authoritarianism in the Trump movement correctly, that, there's still a little bit of uh, sort of celebrityhood. The candidate is celebrity, right? And so I adore her. She's fun. And she is proving to be certainly a lot more fun than Joe Biden, although that's grading on a curve. But she it does have energy, and she
become
seems,
a savvy politician.
yeah, she's a good politician. But I still get frustrated that we we on the left, broadly speaking, I mean, a lot of us disagree on tactics, but share values and goals. That so many of us invest ourselves in a Barack Obama, in a Kamala Harris, instead of saying, well, they're an instrument, do you know what I mean? So yeah, to the extent that she can be an instrument that we can exert pressure on, uh, yeah, good. I mean, somebody was complaining to me about her the other day. She doesn't have an ideology or core beliefs, and I said, "Yeah, that's my favorite thing about her. As long as they can be pressured, we may not get everything we want, but yeah, that's got value. Do you get what I'm driving at?"
Absolutely. Elections should be transactional. This is not a love affair or a popularity contest. It needs to be transactional. It needs to be conditional. The people who have political power serve at our whim. They are our public servants, and we've got to remember that dynamic. And so Kamala Harris's the endorsements that are going to come to Kamala Harris from labor unions and women's groups, they need to come with clear strings attached. The billionaires are really clear about the strings that they've attached. I mean, some of us might have seen Donald Trump talking recently at one of his rallies about how we need to make life good for the billionaires, for good people like Elon Musk. He's giving me $45 million a month. This is like, I'm paraphrasing, but it's very close to what
Right.
Trump's. They're so open about the transactional politics that they engage in with billionaires. Our transactional politics are a lot more ethical because we're not talking about money pulling strings. We're talking about what are these people going to do for our votes, which is what democracy is supposed to be about. Let's get clinically transactional about our politics. Let's make it clear to Kamala Harris if she wants, when I say let's, I mean civil society groups. I would like to see our civil society groups on the left say to Kamala Harris, if you want our endorsement, here's what we expect from you. XYZ, Medicare for all, student loan forgiveness, very strong action on the climate, ending the funding to Israel, and making it completely conditional on the apartheid state ending in Gaza and the West Bank. These are the things that we want from you, and we will endorse you, and we expect this from you. That's the kind. It has to be transactional. That is politics, and we can't let ourselves be swayed by the charismatic celebrity that we're seeing playing out. Now, of course, it's wonderful to see a woman who looks like Kamala Harris take on somebody like Donald Trump, because both of them are symbolic of the opposite ends of our of the white supremacist country we live in, right? An overt white supremacist, a wealthy white male, a younger woman of color who basically represents the changing demographics and the changing future of the country. Daughter of immigrants, etc. Yes, let's not get distracted by that though, because in the end, what is Kamala Harris going to do on all of these issues, the bread and butter issues that we depend on and our futures depend on?
And lastly, I guess I can't possibly know what it's like to be a woman of color. Obviously, I mean, the closest I can come is I'm multi-ethnic in background, but I was raised Jewish, and when I was a kid, it was on thinkable that a Jew might grow up to one day be president, right? But I don't think, I was trying to figure out how would I feel if someone had said 25 years ago, oh, hey, here's a Jew, you should be happy. I'd feel condescended to.
Yeah.
If that was all, if they weren't talking about the issues that matter to me and other Americans, is there any element of that in your reaction to a woman of color running for president?
Of course, we all want demographic representation because we all want to see ourselves in those positions. It's like young black and brown kids seeing television shows and popular movies where the lead character looks like them. It gives you a sense of possible, right? We all want demographic representation, but that's not enough. We want demographic and political representation. And if you think about the fact that wealthy white male landowners have had both demographic and political representation for generations, they have gotten to have both. When do we get to have both, right? Because we know our political asks are quite different from those of wealthy white male landowning elites. And landowners is an archaic term because the equivalent today is the billionaires. But yeah, I want political and demographic representation, but political representation is far more important because of the impact that it has on our day-to-day lives. So I would be very happy with a white male candidate who was an abolitionist, who was going to make sure that we all had, free access to Medicare, that was going to end Israel's war on Gaza. I would be fine. Let's do that. But if I can have both, why not?
Absolutely. Go for it, I say. And as always, Sonali Kolhatkar, again, you can find her piece on this topic in Yes Magazine. As always, thanks for writing, and it was a great piece. And as always, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much, Richard.
We depend on your support here at the 0 Hour, so please give whatever you can at any of the links you see on your screen. Thanks so much.